Now, did you happen to be in the situation to observe other American Jewish chaplains at work?
To a certain extent, yes. I saw Herb Friedman in Berlin often, because I used to visit Berlin often in connection with the work I did with Clay and Madden.
Mm-hmm.
And I found Herb Friedman to be, for a man whose background, a man who was a Reform rabbi, found him not only relating exceedingly well to all elements, all segments of the Jewish population of Berlin, the Germans and those who came on Bricha, and so on, the survivors. But Herb did some interesting things. I remember, for example, that he got from the German economy the reprinting of the Ketubah, and in thousands. Weddings were one after another. Jews were remarrying. I remember coming by my desk from UNRWA. The request came for 10,000 layettes. There were 10,000 Jewish women who were pregnant in the UNRWA camps. 10,000 layettes for babies that were going to be born. So there was an attempt to come back to normalcy. So many had lost their families and were being remarried. And Herb did a beautiful job. Yiddish was not good, but workable, and he struggled with it, but was able to relate magnificently. When I came to Germany, one of my first problems was to help get Klausner out, to expedite his leaving Germany, because he was going to be in trouble. They were, by that time, those chaplains who were active in liberation were there in 45. By the time 46 came around, life in Germany was becoming normal. The military governor was no longer the army of it was an army of occupation, but the military governor was taking over, and they were trying to normalize the German economy, so that the methods and techniques that Klausner had used would be frowned upon. And as a matter of fact, he done great things and wrote a magnificent chapter for himself. And one of the things was to help get him out. I remember that one of the first things Phil spoke to me about when I arrived. Today, Klausner's in trouble. We got to expedite his getting out, which we did.
How did you do that?
Well, that was just a matter of calling up to be sure that orders were cut on him in a hurry to sever his and ready to transfer.
Well, what would have happened if he had not?
Well, the question might have been whether they would have had enough on him to court-martial him for doing things, for even perhaps, who knows, charges like embezzlement. Klausner was did things in a big way. I mean, he just didn't rob even blankets. He robbed hospitals. He changed deeds, forged deeds to get back, to give Jews properties and so on. It was a period of bedlam after a war, no, it's very, we all, I mean, he was definitely a hero. So, other than that, we saw chaplains. I think that Browdy was then in Bamberg, and I met with him in Bamberg. He later went to Ort.
Right. First he was then with the IRO. But do you remember any incidents with Browdy?
Well, my recollection is, and I'm surprised Browdy didn't talk about it himself, that he was very helpful to, maybe he's afraid to admit it, he was very helpful to the Bricha, insofar, of course I imagine it would be dangerous for him to admit it, maybe I should die, but I'm sure he used the information carefully. In order for Jews to cross the border at certain places, it was necessary to know when the motorcycle military police, just what their time schedule was. They used to travel that border. They didn't have, it wasn't completely guarded, but if you knew the timetable, you could cross in between motorcycles. And he helped to get that.
Because of this being in the constabulary.
That's right, he was in the constabulary. I remember visiting, it was at the Katzern, I remember where a lot of the DPs lived in the Katzern. I remember the bridal suite in the Katzern. There was one suite there, these were stables that had been converted into accommodations for the DPs. And there were no real partitions between the rooms. They put up sheets or things like that. But for the bridal suite, they at least had, instead of just being plain cloth partitions, they had lace partitions for the bridal suite in that Katzern. But visited with Browdy at that time. That's about the only chaplains I remember now. Friedman and Browdy and Klausner. So I'm sure I met almost all of them at one time or another.
Well, a lot of them had gone back at that time.
Yes, but there was still a good number in 46. There were still...
How would you characterize the role of the chaplain during that period of time?
The chaplains rendered great service, there's no question about it, and not only to Jewish troops, but in helping, not only to Jews who were serving in the American Army, but together with the Jews to the DPs. They had problems, they had real problems because of the black market. Very often the chapel was used as a place for black marketing transactions.
The chaplain was what?
The chapels.
Oh, the chapels.
Yeah, in other words, VPs would come to the chapel where they would meet Jewish soldiers and, trusting each other, would engage in black market activities, and the chaplains were alert to it. They wanted to be helpful, but by the same token, they didn't want to get themselves into trouble or the total Jewish community into trouble. And so there was always a sense of alarm that they had with regard to it.
What do you think would have happened without the chaplains being there on the scene?
Without the chaplains, I don't think it would have been possible to accomplish as much in, number one, getting the Jewish soldier to relate to the DPs, and they were very, very helpful. Very helpful.
Can you be specific about that?
Even in terms of giving them things.
You don't think the GI would have done it on his own? The Jewish GI?
Well, except that the mere fact that there's a chapel where they have a meeting place, and a place where you come together, in the presence of a chaplain, you have a service, you have a social evening, and so on, gives the Jewish soldier the chance to come and meet. In other words, you have to have some kind of an organized community life. A GI wouldn't on his own go out looking for a poor Jew in the community, but there was a place to meet, so they came. And even in some, because let's remember, the DPs were not yet given what we would call a normal diet. They were allowed more calories. I think the persecutees were allowed 1,800 or 2,000 calories, whereas the others got to 1,200. I don't remember the exact number. There was a differential, and that's hardly enough. I don't have to tell you, you and I subsist now on more than that number of calories per day. So the extra help that the GI should give you, the chocolate bar. Cigarettes, of course, were very valuable. Cigarettes, we bought the cigarettes at the PX for a song, and this was wealth. About 12 cents or 14 cents a pack, they went out and got themselves real money, marks. So this was very helpful. But then even in the relationship between the GIs and the children, and the chapel was very helpful in that respect. Also, you can spoil children. No, there was someone there who had a sense of responsibility for the relationship. But as I said, I did not function as a chaplain, so I wasn't as close to their work. There was one chaplains conference in Germany when I was there. And I was invited, I recall, to give it to our Torah. But again, that was unrelated to the work. It was more of a...
Well, how would you describe the relationship between your office and the chaplains? Was there any...
There was no formal connection at all, but we were in touch with them all the time.
How did you work together in any way? I mean, did you ever call upon them for help?
Yeah, not too much. For example, if I didn't get involved in some of these incidents at Stuttgart, let us say, or at Landsberg.
Yeah, the reason why
there was one at I think at Feldhoffing, where...
Because Landsberg was in April and Stuttgart was in March.
Oh, so I wouldn't have been.
So you weren't there.
But you see, if, for example, we had one incident while I was there, where the Jews recognized a German who had been a capo, and pounced upon him. Didn't kill him. Wanted to kill him. Got him, identified him, and then it made the New York Times here, I was told, anyway. And the story is quite different. I remember when we got the details, we complained that the New York Times reporter really hadn't the proper details. Those details elude me now. But if, for example, we would start with somebody, if there were a chaplain in the vicinity, we would call him up and say, listen, get over there in a hurry and get as many facts as you can until we can get down there. Because
in other words, you use the chaplain quicker than you would use a JDC worker?
Depending on location. There weren't JDC workers all over. We worked closely with them too. but there was a dearth of personnel, and so we'd use whoever was available. In some cases, you had an underworker who was Jewish. Flato, I think was his name. Flato, he later on married someone in the catering business. I think in the Patrician Caterers. I think he's in the wine business now. It's a wine company, Flatow, Flatow. He was with UNRWA. We would use him, someone who was sympathetic, knew our problems and what we had to do. So it could have been a JDC worker, it could have been an UNRWA. We were in touch with Joe Schwartz all the time, and he with us. And then we also had, part of our work was also to entertain VIPs.
Who came over? When you
For example, Bentwich came. Norman Bentwich came from, I remember I entertained him, especially because he ate kosher, and Phil and I had separate, we had our own waitress and cook and so on, and Bentwich ate what little I could eat. Gershom Shalom came over then, as Eliezer Silver I mentioned before.
Mm-hmm.
So receiving these dignitaries. I left about the time that Stephen Wise came. Stephen Wise came for the celebration in connection with the establishment of the organized Jewish community of Germany. I remember vividly he came back. He called me. I was then already at become Rabbi Far Rockaway, giving up the law and going to the rabbinate all the time. He called me to see me. I had no idea what it was about. Simply, he felt that he was the grand old man of the worldwide Jewish community. He was a great man. To thank me in the name of the, that he'd heard in Germany what I had done, and he wanted me to know that he wasn't unaware of what I had done. This was before the 46.
Were you involved in any way with sending guns or arms or
No.
Palestine? Are you familiar with that?
Very much, but I had nothing to do with that at all. One of my
Could you
dear
tell me-
friends
yeah.
in Denver was
Who was that?
Sam Sterling. He's mentioned in the book.
Mm-hmm.
Samuel H. Sterling of Denver. We were together. I mean, we knew. We were together at Grand Alfeo, Texas. We're still very close friends. I saw him this summer on my way back from Yellowstone. He's mentioned in the pledge. What is the
the pledge.
But he was not in Germany. He was doing his work in Colorado, Mexico and Colorado. He was assembling this. We were in touch with each other, but
No, I'm talking specifically with regards to Europe.
no,
You
I had nothing to do with that at all.
And did you know of any chaplains who were involved in this?
I couldn't say. I couldn't say. I have a sneaking suspicion because of the friendship of Herb Friedman later on with, who was the man, he's 80 years old now, but he's still alive. He was head of the UJA at that time. Was very active in it, and he and Herb Friedman become very big. I have a feeling that Herb had something to do with it, but again, that's just a hunch.
Mm-hmm. Were you familiar with Abramowitz, Mike Abramowitz?
Yes, he's one of the men we were in touch with, right?
Mm-hmm. Do you remember any specific incidents?
No.
Did you remember a general impression about what he was doing, type of work he was doing?
Well, I got the feeling that he was also very close to not only his GIs, but very close to the DPs. Do you remember that he was concerned about the black market situation?
He was what?
Concerned about the black market.
In what way?
Situation. It may be that he felt that too much of it was going on in his particular chapel.
Mm-hmm.
Again, this is a faint recollection, but so I've seen him since. We saw each other. He's down in Florida, isn't he?
Miami Beach.
Yeah. We saw each other a couple of years ago. We were reminiscing.
Now, was there anything else about the reparations that you wanted to? What was the outcome of this? Or again, you didn't see the outcome.
No,
of this.
I know that most of it went to. Some of it went to Israel, some went to the United States. In what proportions, I don't know.
Uh-huh. Well, you're talking about reparations
The library.
or the library?
Oh, no, the library. Now, reparations, yes, that later on. This was the beginning, actually. See, at that time, all we did was try to get them to think. As the military governor was working to have them think in terms of reparations.
Mm-hmm.
Reparations were of two kinds. One was what Grobman finally negotiated, and that was the payment to the Jewish people qua people.
Right.
But that didn't come until there was a state. In other words, you had to have somebody receive it. This was pre-state, and all we were talking about is about a way of, number one, to indemnify the people. And that meant two things: the German Jews themselves, and that meant those who worked, or were entitled to those who had been brought in from other countries to Germany, or had worked for the German military as slaves in the concentration camps to be, so that you would have, that was technically called indemnification more than reparations. We use the word indemnity. So what we were doing really with the memoranda, for example, that I had studied before going, the memoranda prepared by Jacob Robinson and Henry Robinson, were really for the sake of educating Clay and Madden, who would ultimately play an important part in it, to think about these situations, because as they were going to develop a German government, that was the function of the military governor, to think that these were things the German government would have to think about. Actually, they didn't go through the reparation until 51. This is 46.
Right.
But the library was the big question of the library was to get it out of Germany.
Well,
in fact, I met
Herb Friedman later said some of it on his own.
all right, but this was what I discussed with Madden was the legal principle on which the stuff could be taken out. What would be our legal justification for not leaving it in Germany?
Right.
On the theory that the donors, those who created these libraries, either the communities, or most of these libraries came from donations. They were not public libraries. They were community libraries. When the communities died, they should not belong to German economy. Is that theory?
Is there any other area that we haven't touched upon that you feel important?
That's about all I can think of. I racked my brain to reconstruct some of the things. They were very eventful months.
Do you have any files of any sort?
Nothing. Well, it bothers me very much, but I'm a cursed archivist. I keep almost nothing. I came back from Germany. I don't know how interesting this is. I came back from Germany on a ship with the first group of of immigrants in August of 46. It was on a Marine Perch. I forget the name of the ship. That was an interesting experience because it gave me an opportunity to help orient these people to what life was going to be like. I gave lectures on the ship to help orient them to what life was going to be like in the United States. On that ship there were established some close friendships too. There was a Rabbi Solomon Drillman in Brooklyn now who was on that ship. He was quite a successful rabbi and teaches at YU. I fell in love on the ship with a 12 or 13-year-old girl at that time who wanted to adopt her. First thing I did when I told my wife when I got off the ship, I said I wanted to adopt that girl. We had 2 sons then, we had no daughters. We had a 3rd son afterwards with no daughters, and I called up right away the United States American, whoever was handling these immigrants, to adopt her. And after a couple of days, they called back urging against it because the girl was so emotionally disturbed that it would take a couple of years of treatment before they could even get her back into any kind of... I mean, she had, for survival, this girl had learned to ingratiate herself with everybody and had won my heart, because this was her method of survival, but that she was sick through and through. So we had from one extreme to another this Grobman who became a very successful, effective rabbi, good teacher, and from this disease.
Fine.
All right. I hope this was, I didn't
Very
waste your
helpful.
time.
No, very helpful. Thank you.